Welcome to another edition of Research Fantasy presents our CFL DFS picks for Week 10 of the regular season. It's sad because DraftKings continues to reduce the size of the tournaments, even though it continues to fill, gives players less motivation to want to play. I don't know why they continue to do this. My guess is that by the middle of September, you're going to be looking at 1,000 entry tournament for no reason, just because they decided they'd rather scale football, which is going to fill, but give us nothing to do in the meantime. Anyway, last week was definitely an interesting week. I mean, that last game of the week with Ricky Ray coming back definitely turned the weekend on its head, because up to that point, that game looked like a veritable fantasy wasteland, and Ricky Ray came in and SJ Green had a monster week, and if you didn't have him, you didn't get much money, if any at all. So hopefully this weekend will be a little bit different. We've got some interesting decisions to make. We are starting to see the rise in cost of some of the running backs. Bryant Mitchell is almost priced like an actual contributor. It's getting close. It's not there yet. He's still $6,900. And we're seeing our wide receivers eclipse 10K as well. So I'm happy to see that, because ultimately I am sick of seeing these lineups that are just no skill and all luck, because it's just put as many guys as you can priced over 9K, because DraftKings isn't going to try to actually price these guys out properly. Alright, so let's talk quarterback. This is going to be a touchy situation. Mike Riley is playing, so that's all you need to know. There's 50% ownership right there. The decision you have to make is one of two things. This is my honest opinion. You either go 100% Mike Riley, or you go something like 20% Mike Riley. I don't often suggest going 100% on anybody, but here's the reality of the situation. If Riley comes out and does what he has been doing the last couple of weeks, that 11.3 price tag or whatever it is now is not going to matter, because he's going to most likely be the highest scoring quarterback of the week. Downside of things is Ricky Ray showing well will do nothing but inflate his ownership, even against a tougher team like Calgary. Matt Nichols has looked good enough. Trevor Harris in a decent situation. So I really don't know what to make of how Riley's ownership is going to be. To be completely honest with you, when I saw it at 46% in the $4 tournament last week, I thought that was laughable. I thought for sure he was going to be near 76%. I thought at least he'd be near what Bryant Mitchell was, which was like 65%. But he just absolutely was not. He was under 50% owned. People have to be betting at this point on when this guy is going to slow down. It seems unsustainable for someone to be able to have that much production for this long, but it has been going on. So we ultimately don't want to shortcut what, the impact of what he can do. But I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn on things this week, and I'm going to play either contrarian or stupid, and we'll find out after the game, and that's Jonathon Jennings. Priced $2,000 under Mike Riley. Gets an Ottawa Red Blacks team that just does not look good on defense. The BC Lions don't look great on defense. I think this is likely to be a pretty high-scoring game. If that's going to be the case, it seems foolish to not want to buy into at least one of these quarterbacks. We finally saw Jonathon Jennings work his legs last week, and admittedly, in a game where he didn't even look great, he still managed almost 24 fantasy points. That's 7 points less than what Mike Riley was capable of doing. Now, you're going to need him to score a lot more than 7 less points than Mike Riley for it to be worthwhile. But if this is the game where he's finally able to get things going, I need to have some exposure to him. I'm going to assume that his ownership will not be that high. He's been absolutely horrible this year. So you don't need to do too much to go overweight on him. Having 20% ownership on Jonathon Jennings may end up being overweight on him this week. But it's the path I want to take. I just really think that, moving from the Calgary defense to Ottawa is going to be a big step in the right direction for him. I don't love that this game is on the road, but I do think we will see Jennings get his legs into things. I think he will come close to that 30-point mark, and that's the only reason Mike Riley is not on the list again this week. If we want to go to the running back position, I think I'm going to jump back on to Ladarius Perkins this week, taking on Saskatchewan. We've basically seen all these teams come off of bye weeks and just not look great. The Stampeders, maybe they scored some points last week, maybe the defense looked good, whatever, but for the most part, the teams coming back off of bye weeks just haven't looked great. It's a tough push. The Eskimos' defense continues to lose players left and right. So it's being weakened week after week. But I just have a feeling that this is going to be a running show. Zylstra likely to return could impact Perkins positively because they know he's a weapon, and they're going to have to spend time focusing more on Zylstra than they were on Stafford, Corey Watson, Getzlaff. It moves Duke Williams back to an outside receiver from a slot, and I think it does nothing but good for Perkins. So at his price of $6,700, I'm fine buying in there. I think he should be a very good play. Wide receiver, do not mind me some Manny Arceneaux, $7,900. Had a solid game, 10 for 89 last week. That gets you 18.9 points. He goes just a few yards more. You're talking about a 25-point performance without scoring a touchdown. If Brian Burnham is out again, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But if he's out, Arceneaux should be a lock for the same amount of targets. Chris Williams, I do like him as a deep threat in this game. But Arceneaux is definitely someone who piques my interest. And I want to take advantage of it. Also, I'll go with Nik Lewis of the Montreal Alouettes, $5,500. Lewis is one of the most overlooked fantasy assets because he's a better football player than fantasy football player. And I know that probably seems contradictory considering that this is a fantasy football. But this could be a sneaky play. He only has one touchdown on the year, so I'm not necessarily looking at it from he needs to, get to the mean and he'll start scoring touchdowns. But I am saying against a weaker Blue Bombers defense in a game that could, again, very well be close, I could see a lot of those dump-off passes to Lewis being in the game plan. If he's able to catch another 8 balls for 80 yards and he can get into the end zone, then you're looking at a big day at a pretty safe price. I do know that Darian Durant much prefers Ernest Jackson and B.J. Cunningham for the touchdowns, but a lot of those have been deeper touchdowns. So I think if they get into that 20, that's that Nik Lewis range, and I think he could end up being a steal at $5,500 this week. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Check us out at researchfantasy.com. Follow us on Twitter at researchandwin, and join us again next week.